Today we're going to look at some tips to make your living dining room more modern, luxurious, and elegant. Let's get started. The first one would be the combination of cushions. We have several options with cushions since we could combine several of the ones we already have at home, but we can also make them ourselves. We've seen several combinations and different methods on the Decora tu mismo channel to make our own cushions in a simple and easy way. And really, the only thing we would need is, well, we could sew them if we have the skill to do so, but an alternative to sewing could be fabric glue. We have several options, but I'm going to explain two specific ones to you. And one would be to cut the cushion to size, turn it inside out, glue it all around the edge, and then, well, put your hand inside, so to speak, and pull it out and turn it right side out. And then we could fill it, and this would be a simple cover to make that we could use for any cushion in our home. The second option, which is, I would say, even simpler, would be to wrap the cushion as if it were a kind of gift. We also did this on a little bench we made at my grandmother's house. All we did was take some cushions that were already made, take the fabric, and basically just wrap the fabric around. And that way, we have a pretty practical and totally personalized cover, since we can choose the fabric we like the most. Fabrics are quite affordable nowadays, and in most fabric stores, you can find a section with fabric scraps that usually cost only 1 to 1.5 euros. And we can make perfect use of them to create cushions and give them a new look. The second tip is to add texture to the walls, which is becoming increasingly popular, and personally, I love it. The first option we could consider is putting up slats, creating shapes on our wall. We could put up slats or we could put up moldings. In fact, this can be done in the dining room, entryway, or bedroom. Honestly, it's applicable in several places. The only thing we would have to do is measure them, cut the slats, and then simply stick them directly onto the wall. We can even add some small nails to make it a little more secure. Then we apply a primer and move on to painting it, and we can do this on an entire wall. Or we also have the option to do it from the middle down and use it, for example, as a kind of headboard. Or if it were in a dining room, we could put a shelf above it and hang a few pictures. The truth is, we have endless possibilities. Another option that we've also done in some places is installing slats. We have several options as well. One would be to buy the slats so it comes out cheaper for us. I'm going to tell you that it would be without sanding, without planing, and without anything. And then we would simply have to take them and place them on our wall, creating a small structure on the backside. We would place our structure at the top and bottom, and we would use some small nails to attach our slats, leaving the same distance between each one. That way it turns out just perfect. This is the most affordable option, especially if the slats are unplaned. Like I said, these are sold in packs. Maybe a pack of 8 slats could cost us 10 or 15 euros, and honestly, it's the most economical choice. What's the downside in this case? Well, sometimes they're a bit warped, so we have to work a little with the slat to make sure it doesn't look too crooked. Also, since they're not very sturdy slats, they're not made of plywood, they're usually pine. They're quite flexible, and we can give them a little bit of play in this sense. If simplicity is preferred and spending a bit more is okay, we can always opt for the panels. These panels are pre-made with the slats arranged side by side, and all we have to do is put it on the wall, either by gluing it or by using some small nails. It's very simple, and in fact we can even hide doors or put it on the entire wall. The truth is that slats offer many possibilities and fit with various styles, which is a great thing about them. A big advantage of these decorative panels is that, besides looking nice, they also help us with acoustics. Well, sometimes we don't take this into account, but for a bedroom, for example, it would be really good for us. So it gives it a more elegant look, and besides, it helps us with the acoustics. Another option we could create to give texture to the walls, well, in this case, it wouldn't be texture, it would be creating another wall where we could build, say, a drywall shelf. This has always been done a lot. I love how it looks, and in fact, this shelf, well, we could cover it with micro cement, with wallpaper, or even in the niche space. What we could do is add wood to it, and honestly, it looks beautiful. I love it, and we also have so many possibilities. If we don't want to create the shelf, since it's a bit more complicated, what we can do is simply bring the wall a little forward. And here, what we could do is place our television, and if we're feeling a bit bolder, maybe even a fireplace at the bottom. This looks very nice, very elegant, but I suppose you've noticed that it takes away some storage space? So what we can do is leave a small section at the bottom empty. And here we could place our furniture, either by creating custom furniture or by buying it and adjusting the drywall to fit the size of the furniture. This way, we maintain the storage area without compromising the style, beauty, and elegance that moving the wall forward provides. Another option to add texture to the walls could be installing paneling. In fact, we did this in my parents' apartment. I don't know if you remember, it wasn't paneling. In this case, it was polyvinyl chloride that we installed, but we could go for paneling since it's a little more affordable. The truth is that polyvinyl chloride is very easy to install and it's especially resistant to humidity. But it's also true that if we hit it, since it's hollow inside, we could end up breaking it. This also applies to paneling. Even though they are less resistant to humidity, it might not break as easily because it's not hollow inside. This same paneling, instead of placing it on the entire wall, we could install it from the middle down and then add a strip on top as a finish or even a molding. We also have many options to work with paneling, and depending on the style of our living dining room, it can look really cool. The third tip would be about paintings. I guess you've already noticed that paintings are quite expensive. Paintings can be expensive, so it's important to consider alternatives. In this case, what is the alternative to hanging a painting? Well, it could be, for example, wallpaper or vinyl paper. We could put wallpaper on an area of our wall. And what we would do next is add some slats, frame it, and that way it would look like a kind of picture. I think it could look really nice. And if we know how to choose an elegant and luxurious wallpaper, we can give our living dining room a more modern feel. In fact, if we don't want to go with this option because we want to move it later, we could look for a cheaper wood like medium density fiberboard. These are woods that are about 3 millimeters thick. So by looking for a wood that fits the size we need, we could cover all that wood and then add some slats around it like a frame. We could move that frame from one place to another. And actually, wallpaper or vinyl paper is much less expensive than what a decorative panel could cost. The fourth tip would be to include black and gold elements. This will depend a lot on the style we have in our living dining room, but it could fit very well in an Art Deco, industrial, or even some Nordic style living rooms. If we can combine these colors, we can give our dining room an elegant touch. The fifth would be making our own lamps. In fact, on the Decor Tu Casa channel, we've already made several. The truth is that we really like to innovate and make original lamps, and I think we can give our living dining room a very personal touch. And besides, these lamps, big and eye-catching, tend to be quite expensive and luxurious. So if we find a way to get them and to be able to create a beautiful lamp, we really have a lot to gain here. We can go for a pendant lamp for the dining area, and for example, for the sofa area, we can use light fixtures. There are many styles of lamps, depending on the style we want to give our living dining room. The sixth little trick would be to arrange our cutlery, napkins, and plates in an orderly and organized way. It will attract more attention and give that feeling of peace and order. The next one, which is closely related to this, is if we have a display cabinet in our dining room, since the display cabinet has a part where things are exposed. This is where you can see what we have displayed. Basically, what we have to do is select some unique pieces and leave enough space so that what is displayed can be seen and is perceived in an orderly and elegant way. The next step would be to light some candles. Well, there are more things, but we could light some candles because they give that feeling of peace and harmony and make the space feel cozy. We can also pair them with a beautiful candle holder, but we also have the option of adding a fireplace. There are several fireplaces on the market, and I spent quite a bit of time looking at them and weighing the pros and cons of each one. And honestly, if I had to choose one, it would be a bioethanol fireplace. It's true that bioethanol fireplaces are really just decorative. That is, if we want a fireplace to give us heat, we shouldn't choose this option since it won't provide warmth, but it will give us that cozy feeling. We'll light this bioethanol fireplace only on certain occasions, not all day, as it would be very expensive. We'll light it when family or friends visit, or for special occasions at home. Of course, if we're alone and want to light it, we can do that too. But it's true that even though the fireplace itself isn't expensive, we do have to pay for the bioethanol. So if we use it a lot, or the more we use it, the more expensive it will get for us. We'll have to buy more bioethanol and therefore it will cost us more. That's why I say it's best to use it on special occasions, right? On occasions when it's really worth turning it on. This fireplace emits the same light as a wood-burning one, but without producing smoke or odors. That's a major benefit. They're gaining popularity daily due to two significant advantages over other fireplace types. We also have the option of installing an electric fireplace, which in this case would be pretty much the same, although sometimes they do give off a bit of heat. Definitely more than the bioethanol one. But what's the problem with the electric one? Well, it uses a lot of electricity. Even if we install a bioethanol heater, which requires paying for the fuel, electricity will always cost more than bioethanol. Let's discuss costs, as we've been talking about prices without being specific. How much could bioethanol cost in this case? Well, a 1-liter bottle of bioethanol, which can last us approximately between 2 and 4 hours, can be around €5. So it's true that the more we buy, the cheaper it is for us, more economical. So in this case, if we intend to light it several times, or for example, Christmas is coming, a very special time, with fireplaces you sit down and read a little book. Well, of course, in these cases, we might as well buy bigger containers, and that way we'll save a bit of money. Obviously, if our intention is to heat, we would have to look for an alternative. The bioethanol one wouldn't work for this. We could go for a pellet or wood-burning one. Although I can tell you they have some disadvantages, and if you want, we can analyze and look at them in another video. Since I know several people who have this type of fireplace, and well, they find both good and bad things about them. But if you want, just let me know in the comments, and later on we'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages and how we set up our bioethanol fireplace. This could be a question you might be asking yourself right now, since it's a very clear option that we have, and personally it's the one I like the most. Embedding it in a drywall partition looks beautiful, elegant, and luxurious to me. But it's true that we have to build the structure, so it can get a little more complicated. That's why there are bioethanol fireplaces that don't necessarily have to be embedded in a wall. They can also be placed on the surface. Let's say we could place it in any little corner of our house and it could look beautiful. To reduce bioethanol consumption, smaller fireplaces have been introduced, such as tabletop models, which also have a cool appearance. And if we don't want to spend so much money, or we just want something that gives a little bit of flame and that's it, well, it could be a perfect option. The 9th trick would be having some windows or doors that open onto our terrace. If this is the case, what we can do is place large, beautiful planters with eye-catching plants right as we step outside. Let's say you can see it from inside. Since entering a dining room and having a view of a garden area on the terrace gives a sense of elegance and luxury, which is something we can hardly achieve with other things. In addition, we can integrate these plants so that they become part of our decor. For example, we've often seen pampas grass plants. Some olive branches that, in this case, I used to decorate the retreat we saw on the Decorate Your Home channel. For instance, dried hydrangeas, a topic we've covered frequently on the Plantitis channel. We take our hydrangea before it gets all wilted, we take it out, cut it, and spray a little hairspray on it, and that's it. So our flower turns out really pretty, and actually, over here we have some that I've used for decoration. I've put them in a cute little basket I bought, which only cost me €2. I've put the dried hydrangeas in like this and it looks beautiful, don't you think? And finally, the 10th point, which is not, that's why less important, is the topic of indirect lighting, although we've talked in other videos about the importance of indirect lighting. But in this case, it can help add elegance to our room. Indirect lighting can be created using LED strips and profiles, recessed areas, or by placing lights under furniture. There are many options. It's really about choosing the one that's most comfortable for us, the one that's also more affordable, preferably one we can do ourselves. Always keeping in mind that the ceiling has to be completely smooth, because if not, all the imperfections will be visible. Well guys, I hope these 10 little tips have been useful for you to have a nice dining room, a more luxurious, elegant, and modern living dining room. I hope you enjoyed it. See you in future videos. Bye for now.